So I am not a panelist, but I'm going to give, this is what I do every single day as the borough president, and we can have an offline conversation. But as the borough president, I have the authority to give a developer an address to the building. They need us in what's called the ULERT process, which is the public review process. They look to us for capital funding for their project. When they come to my office, we start the conversation by saying, thank you for thinking about the Bronx. Thank you for wanting to invest in the Bronx. Thank you for wanting to do business in the Bronx, but now you're going to do business with the Bronx. And the way they do business with the Bronx is that now we start highlighting and outlining vendors, marrying them to vendors or subcontractors on the construction part, making sure that we have a list. So we work with the economic arm of our office called the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation, BOEDC. We also work with the State Department of Labor, who has a team at the BOEDC. And we have things called job fairs. And then based on your skill set, based on what developers want, and based on if you're a small business, that's how we marry folks to particular projects. It is one of the big reasons why we've been able to cut unemployment, like I said earlier, by more than half. It is the reason, a major reason why 110,000 more Bronxites are working today than the first day that I took office. So on the economic development side, those are the types of conversations that we're having. When you see the developments happening around the neighborhood, so for instance, yesterday, there was something called the Jerome Avenue Corridor rezoning. One of the things that we have to do is we have to negotiate strong with the city so that as we rezone certain corridors, we also protect the people who live there. So when it comes to tenants, we have something now called the Right to Counsel bill law in the city of New York, so that we have tenants who make under a certain amount of annual income, they can have free attorneys now representing them in housing court, so that if you have a landlord who harasses them, now we're trying to equal and balance the scales of justice in housing court. We also have something called the first pilot program, which is the certificate of no harassment. So if what you get when you start to rezone and you start to develop, the surrounding landlords, they start licking their chops. And they start saying, wait a minute, if the community is on the rise, now I can force out these and harass my tenants, even if it's not inside the ULERT process. What we want now is for landlords to get like a letter grade when you go to a restaurant. It's called a certificate of no harassment. If that landlord wants to benefit in any way, shape, or form from government, if that landlord needs permits to change or augment the facade or do some type of improvements, capital improvements to their building, they have to prove that they don't harass their tenants. When they prove that, they get a certificate of no harassment. Without that certificate, everything else is a no-go. So we want to make sure that we hold them honest. And then lastly, it really is incumbent upon all of us, and to just bring it back full circle to what we're doing here today, ultimately, maybe our parents are poor. Maybe our grandparents were poor. Maybe not everybody in this room is going to be a multi-billionaire like Richard. But the fact is that you go to college for a reason. You go to college because you want to better your skill set. You go to college because you expect to make a certain salary so that you can take care of yourself and your loved ones. And so while we want to make sure that we give you the right opportunities and the right connections, ultimately it's about finding you a job and changing your mindset. Once upon a time, at least in the Bronx, and I don't want to make this Bronx-centric, but when I was growing up, you got an education, you got your career, and you got the hell out of there. And not everybody, thank God, wants to do that anymore. People want to stay. And so this is what this is about, where we want to make sure that you get a great education, but also get the Googles of the world and get the state government and the city government to be able, especially if you're from CUNY, I spoke about this, no disrespect to the private colleges. Since I'm a CUNY twofer, LaGuardia Lehman, I believe that the city of New York has to do a better job with all of the billions that they give out in contracts. with all of the city agencies, since we already invest in CUNY as a system, since so many of our students are getting assistance from the city, we should get a good rate of return on that investment. And so why not, if you're a nurse who graduates from the nursing program at Lehman College, why not make sure that the public hospitals are hiring you? If you are a business major from Baruch College, why is it that the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation of the City of New York, is not using your intellectual capital after we invested in you?